Hey guys, the diorama in today's video is again going to be a little more simple and focused on textures. I'm only going to make one wall and the floor. So to start out, I'm using this cheap craft foam and I cut out a space for some industrial doors. And then I painted a little layer so I could see it better as I score lines for the bricks. I'm going to dab on multiple shades of paint so it looks varied. A lot of old brick like this has a very varied texture to it. I also used a wash to tie everything in. And now I'm using modeling paste and spreading it over the whole surface to get it in the grout lines, and then I wipe away the excess with some wet towel. This is half of the door. I 3D modeled it on my iPad in Shaper 3D and then I printed it. I'm just priming it and priming this electrical panel that I also modeled and printed. To give this metal door some really gritty texture, I mixed in very fine sand with my paint, and I'll do that with a couple layers of paint throughout this process. Because I primed it with this red-brown color, I can selectively leave some areas not painted, and that'll show through as rust, but it'll also look better once I do all my other layers. So now I'm going in with a wash in different areas, a really dark, gritty wash, sometimes mixing sand into these, and layering on the rust and grime. Here I'm using my rust colored pigment powders. I have a couple different shades of this and I layer those on, some wet, some dry, as the dry gives it more dusty feel. And after that, I'm starting to use my liquid latex technique. I dab on some liquid latex mask and then paint right over it. And once that's dry, I just start removing the latex, letting the paint peel up. Now this is a black pigment powder. I'm just using it in different areas to dirty this surface up. And then I go over and do my paint peeling technique on this electrical panel. I'm using a black wash to darken the recesses and to just dirty up the surface of this some more. And here I'm painting a button that's going to go on the wall for the door. Before I go further, I'm just going to glue the doors into the wall and also glue the foam brick wall into place. Now that we have multiple paint layers on, I'm going back in with some rust pigment powders to make it a little more rusty again. And I'm adding a little piece of glass to put on this window here of the door. This piece is a big piece of cement that goes right over the door. I just used a piece of poster board, spread some joint compound on it, and once it dried, I painted it gray. And now I'm using different colors of paint to make it look dirty, look like there's some rust water lines streaking down, and give it that weathered old cement look. You won't be able to see it except for in the finished shots, but I also took an orange ink and painted the edges of the paint peeling so that it looked like the lead paint peels had rust to them, and I thought it really added to the effect. These are pieces that are going to go on the corners of the door, just some pieces of metal that were really rusted, and then the peeling paint technique again. Now to start on the floor, I'm just putting a thin layer of Mod Podge down, and then I'm going to use my tile grout to start as dust and dirt. I spray that down well with diluted rubbing alcohol and some diluted PVA glue. Once that was dry, I started to use my airbrush just to darken down areas, make it a little more brown, make it just a darker shade of dirt. And then this is a darker brown wash that I'm putting on as well. Once I glued the wall onto the floor base, I had this area that I needed to cover still, so I'm using some paint mixed with modeling paste, and then after that dried, I used a wash to tie it all together with the other one. And this is just going to be a piece of pipe coming from the electrical panel. I bent the pipe so that it would go from the panel all across the wall, but I did not capture that on camera. Now I'm making some garbage. I wanted a lot of different types of garbage on the floor, so these are just pieces of paper towel that I've wet and put some watered down glue on, and then I'm gluing them to the base. And then I'm going to go in with some wash and different paints to dirty them up. This is a small box that I 3D printed and then rusted up with some pigment powders. And to make some old wet cardboard, I'm taking some chipboard and I'm wetting it and then crumpling it up and using some watered down glue to keep it in place. And this is a small piece of metal piping that I'm dirtying up. I just kept adding more and more pieces of random junk, securing it with glue, some watered down glue, and dirtying it up further with some crushed up pastels and pigment powders. One of the last things I did was use some green pigment powder to really sell that this stuff has been wet and molding and moss growing all over it. Then I painted the base black, and it's time for the finished shots. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions about my techniques or anything else that I do in the video, drop them in the comments and I'll try to help out. Also, if you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe so you see all my new projects. Thanks again. See you next time.